Zhou Kor finally overcomes her hesitation and decides to side with Zhang Yi, deeming the neighbor's theft far more reprehensible than any personal compromise. She meets Zhang Yi, who demands to see the useful information she possesses before granting her request, and they strike a terse agreement. Meanwhile, a massive group chat erupts with over 99 angry posts demanding that Zhang Yi surrender his stockpiles, threatening to storm his home if he refuses. Zhang Yi responds with a mocking laugh, profanity, and a cold smile, his excitement barely concealed as he anticipates the onslaught. True to his word, Zhang Yi converts his living room into a war chamber, arranging 5 high-quality steel crossbows, 3 professional compound bows, hundreds of bolts and arrows, 2 iron boxes of steel balls, and an arsenal of melee tools, including a machete, a long crowbar, a baseball bat, and a hunting knife. He also positions pepper spray, a stun gun, gasoline, chemical reagents, and dozens of homemade Molotov cocktails, all ready for use. As the neighbors reorganize in a new group chat that excludes Zhang Yi, they add Chen Zhanghao to their ranks and declare a unified goal: eliminate Zhang Yi and claim his abundant supplies, setting the stage for an imminent clash. Chen Zhanghao, still haunted by Zhang Yi's earlier cruelty, gathers a small band of 6 armed men and attempts to persuade the rest of the building's inhabitants to join his raid, promising to share half of the seized supplies. Sun Jichao amplifies the call, urging everyone to abandon old grudges and storm the well-defended house as a collective right. The crowd roars with envy and rage, chanting for Zhang Yi's death, while only a few, such as Uncle Yu and Zhou Kor, remain silent, their faces reflecting doubt amid the frenzy. Inside his house, Zhang Yi methodically cleans a handgun he has honed at the shooting club, his confidence unshaken after a month of intensified training. A message from Zhou Kor alerts him that the mob is converging on his home. He replies calmly, "Oh, I see," and issues a stark warning: "Remember, don't come over this time. I'm only warning you once." Zhou Kor, torn between appeasing the angry crowd and her own principles, chooses not to join the attack, holding fast to her moral code while watching the impending showdown unfold. Zhang Yi sat in his fortified apartment, the silence broken only by a frantic message from Uncle Yu, the building's gatekeeper. Uncle Yu warned that the angry residents were converging on Zhang Yi's floor with weapons, and confessed his inability to intervene, expressing shame for the debt he owed the recluse. Zhang Yi responded calmly, assuring him that the very fact Uncle Yu had not joined the mob was proof of his kindness, and that he would handle the situation alone. Moments later, a low tremor rippled through the floorboards as hundreds of desperate residents surged up the stairwell, their exhaustion evident in the cold air of the broken elevator shaft. Through his surveillance screens, Zhang Yi identified a knife-wielding neighbor from apartment 2402, a young couple brandishing kitchen knives, and a sea of faces twisted with envy and hunger. The crowd clogged the hallway, some brandishing umbrellas to keep the freezing water from splashing him, while others pounded on his reinforced door, shouting threats and demanding he surrender. Scanning the camera feeds, Zhang Yi realized that Sun Jichou and Chen Zhanghao were absent from the assault, confirming his suspicion that they intended to use the mob as cannon fodder. Without hesitation, he flipped the high-voltage switch, sending a lethal surge through the doorway. The first man who slammed the door was instantly convulsed, his scream cut short as the current arced through the tightly packed crowd behind him. 7 or 8 more victims, lacking thick clothing, were instantly charred, their bodies collapsing into a blackened heap that filled the hallway with the acrid smell of burning flesh. The remaining onlookers recoiled in horror, some vomiting bile from empty stomachs, while a few tried to flee only to find the stairwell sealed off by Chen Zhanghao, gun in hand, who barked orders to turn back. Chen Zhanghao's blockade forced the crowd into a frenzy. Sun Jichao, despite his own ailments, shouted accusations and promises of a warm fire and food beyond the door, urging the men to ram it with any wood they could find. A battered piece of wardrobe wood was hoisted and hammered repeatedly, yet the massive black iron door, later identified by a bank employee among the mob as a vault-grade security door, showed only faint dents. The bank worker warned that even explosives would not breach it, and that only a master lockpicker with a key might succeed. The crowd's strength waned in the sub-zero temperatures, their legs trembling as they took turns pushing, realizing they were unlikely to break through before exhaustion claimed them. Undeterred, Zhang Yi retrieved a large Sennheiser speaker from his alternate dimension storage, connected it to his phone, and blasted his favorite upbeat track, the thumping rhythm echoing through the thin walls and stoking the mob's fury. With the door still unyielding, he slipped a crossbow into position at the firing port, eyes narrowed as he prepared to unleash another volley. The scene settled into a tense stalemate, a besieged, well-armed recluse on one side, a starving, enraged horde on the other, and a door that seemed as immutable as the winter outside. The chapter closed on the crackle of music and the silent promise of another deadly shot. The crowd outside Zhang Yi's fortified apartment pressed against the narrow corridor, voices rising in frantic speculation about their next move. Without hesitation, Zhang Yi raised his crossbow and let loose a torrent of bolts, not bothering to aim. The whistling projectiles struck dozens of people, sending them crashing to the floor. The sudden onslaught turned the cramped passage into a deadly stampede, bodies fell, were trampled, and screams echoed off the concrete as panic seized the mob. In the midst of the chaos, Chen Jianghao stood at the stairwell, gun in hand, his cold stare and the barrel of his weapon cutting a grim path through the fleeing crowd. He declared the residents cannon fodder, refusing any chance of escape and forcing the terrified masses to confront the lethal reality of their assault. As the arrows continued to rain down, some survivors managed to locate the narrow firing port and scrambled to block it with mops, brooms, and any debris they could find. Zhang Yi, unmoved, slid the iron door shut and locked it from the inside, sealing the aperture with a mechanism that could only be opened from within. The sudden closure halted the barrage, leaving the corridor littered with wounded bodies, many pierced by rusty tetanus-coated arrows that promised a slow, painful death. The survivors shouted curses and challenges at the unseen shooter, their voices a mixture of grief and fury, while the interior of the apartment filled with the blaring strains of energetic music that Zhang Yi had turned up to a deafening volume. Inside, Zhang Yi paused his relentless firing, his hand growing tired. He slipped into the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of cola from the refrigerator, and gulped it down with a satisfied sigh. Returning to his monitoring station, he kept a vigilant eye on the frantic scene outside, his screen displaying the desperate attempts of the mob. The music continued to pulse, a deliberate provocation that drowned out the cries of the injured. Sun Jichao, clutching his injured leg, shouted a new plan to the crowd: if the alloy door could not be broken, perhaps the surrounding wall could be smashed. Hope flickered as the residents rallied around the idea, gathering hammers, axes, and makeshift tools to batter the building's exterior. The mob surged toward the outer wall, swinging sledgehammers with all their might. The first strike cracked the plaster, sending a cloud of white dust into the air, and for a brief moment the crowd believed they had found a weakness. But the second blow produced a metallic clang. The burly man wielding the hammer screamed as his hands were sliced open, blood congealing in the freezing air. When the dust settled, the residents uncovered a thick layer of black steel beneath the plaster, identical to the alloy door. The revelation that the entire facade was a 20-centimeter slab of high-quality steel shattered any remaining optimism. Hammers bounced off the unyielding surface, axes shattered, and the crowd's shouts turned to bewildered cries as they realized the futility of their assault. Zhang Yi watched the futile attempts with a mixture of disdain and amusement. He turned on the apartment's noise-canceling function, muffling the external clamor while the music continued to blare, a stark reminder of his control. Chen Jianghao, still stationed at the stairwell, voiced his cold assessment of the situation, noting that even the ceiling and floor were likely forged from the same impenetrable material. He expressed a singular desire to seize the apartment, but acknowledged the hopelessness of breaking through a sealed metal box without proper tools. The residents, now faced with a wall of steel on every side, fell into a deeper despair, their cries turning to lamentations about guilt, survival, and the cruel ingenuity of Zhang Yi's defenses. The chapter closed on a scene of hopelessness, the crowd trapped outside a fortress of steel, their hopes crushed as surely as the hammers they wielded.